Hey, this is Mark Goldberg from Mark Vlogs Watches. Thanks for joining me, and it's time for a quick wristwatch check. Quick wristwatch check. And that's the Seiko PADI version, which I'm going to be reviewing right now. So thanks for joining me. Here we are with this particular version of the new Seiko Turtle. And this one is the PADI edition, PADI. It's right here at the 6 o'clock position, kind of obscured right now by the hour hand, but it's the PADI Professional Association of Dive Instructors edition, and this one seems to be catching on with collectors and Seiko aficionados. So it's a 44mm watch with the screw-in crown here at the 4 o'clock position, and I'm going to talk all about this watch, and I'm going to divide this review up into categories. We're going to talk about the dial, and therefore we'll also talk about the loom. Then we're going to talk about the bezel. We'll talk about the overall case and its design and implementation. We'll talk about the bracelet and the clasp, which is open right now. And as part of that, we will talk about the dive extension, and we will talk about this crown. So let's dig in and get started. We're going to talk about the dial now, but I have to say that in my opinion, the dial and the case are the two real charmers about this piece. So as we go along, by the way, you're going to hear me critique and have lots of little criticisms, which I think is probably not unwarranted on the one hand. On the other hand, we have to bear in mind that this is a piece that you're going to spend somewhere in the neighborhood of $400 or so to acquire, and that does not put it into the category of a $2,000 or $3,000 watch. So it's going to have some flaws, and I'm definitely going to point them all out, but I want to say before I even get there that although I have lots of little complaints, the dial, the color scheme of the bezel, and the case have won me over to the point where I wouldn't trade this in. Okay, so I'm gonna give you lots of little bitches as we go, but overall I like it very much. We've kind of zoomed in on the dial here a little bit so we can talk about it a little bit better. The first thing that you're going to notice is the color. Now that may be a little hard to decipher in this artificial lighting, but the dial is blue. Right now it looks to be a navy blue, but when you get it outside, it's variegated and it has a starburst pattern, which you may or may not be able to detect on camera. So I will throw a couple of still shots in here so you can kind of get a quicker look at this dial. Here's a closer look at what the color looks like in natural lighting. Remember, it's a 45mm case and it's 13.5 millimeters thick. But the color is quite striking, although it's not horsey or overly bright looking. So although you're going to get interplay of the color of the dial when you're moving around outside, if you're indoors, it's not going to be all that noticeable. So it's not what I would call a super flashy watch. Let's get a look here at the hour and the hour indices. You'll notice that they are applied. They are surrounded by a silver metal, and then they are painted super thick with Lumibrite, which is Seiko's Loom paint, and we're going to talk about that more when we get to Loom. But let's just say the Loom on this watch is completely amazing. There's a trick to looming it up that I want to talk to you about, but it's truly an amazing loom that you get on this watch. So, and then you have that double index for at the 12 o'clock position with the sword kind of separating those two pieces. That makes it very easy always to know when you're oriented at the 12 o'clock position, and of course that's really important for a watch that is presumably a dive watch. Naturally, most of us are not going to dive with this watch, but nonetheless, it has that capability. The complication that it features is the day-date. I find that super handy because I work a lot. You know, I'm a dog trainer, and dogs don't really care if it's the weekend. They want to go out every day. So those of you who are off every weekend, you probably orient yourself by hump day. Is it Wednesday yet? Is it hump day? It's Friday. Woo, let's go. But you know, for dog trainers, life is not like that. So I tend to work 7 days a week until I'm just, you know, I've had it, you know, and then I'll take a vacation and I'll go travel someplace. So I really like this complication because I tend to lose track of the days when I'm working and sometimes when I'm on vacation too. So the older I get, the more I'm appreciating that. I also really like how the hours are called out with hash marks that are red and then filled in between with the minutes that are hashed out in white. So I like that very much too. And the chapter ring is angled in there, as you can see. So what you get is a lot of sort of like a 3D effect, because the hour indexes or indices are marked so thickly with the Lumibrite that they're like little cupcakes in there. And so they definitely have depth. Then you have that angled chapter ring, and you have the interplay of the light and the dark, and of course the splash of red there. Not only do you have a splash of red on the bezel, but you also have it on that hand, which is of course the minute hand. I think what they're trying to do is to make the minute hand as obvious as it can be, so that when you are using the bezel to time your dive, you won't overstay your welcome under the water. So one criticism that I have relates to the hands. I do like the hour hand, but I don't object to this hour form or the arrow format of the minute hand. That's no problem for me. However, it's short. You know, it does have that little projection or projectile right there on the end of it, but it doesn't really come out quite close enough to the hash marks, I don't think. And the reason I'm saying that is because when you go to line up the bezel, you're doing a little of eyeball work to get from here, covering that gap, all the way to there. And I think if that hand came out a little further towards the towards that rehaut or chapter ring, that it would just make the lining up of the bezel a little bit easier. So I believe that that minute hand is shorter than it should be, and I don't love that aspect of it. The other thing relates to the second hand, and this is something that I just don't understand. You know, your eye, of course, is going to be drawn to that illuminated counterweight or counterbalance on the end, literally the very end, the lollipop end of the second hand, but the seconds are being indicated here at the other end of that hand, and of course that's not illuminated. So in the dark, you are actually, you know, if you're following the loomed lollipop, you're 30 seconds behind, and if you want to calculate out exactly where really is the second, then you have to do a mental calculation. I don't understand that. In my reading, I believe I came across something which indicates that this is a nod towards an old version of the Turtle, which had a lollipop but at the other end, and they wanted to switch it up. I don't know. Frankly, I think it's a little stupid. If they wanted to lollipop that, then they should have put it in the front, or figured a way to illuminate the tip of that second hand. So I don't know. I have to say it's super attractive. So there is that. And also when it's illuminated, I'll show you, it's even prettier. But it just seems to be kind of a goofy placement for the only bit of loom on the second hand. Okay, so what I've done here is I've pulled the crown out, unscrewed it, pulled it out, and then just advanced the time because I wanted to show you that PADI logo. No sense doing a review of PADI and then covering the damn PADI up. But you'll notice in so doing, I've hacked the seconds. So that has, this is a hand winding and hackable movement. I've got to pull the crown out. Oh no, I don't. I got to push it in, sorry, to wind it and to unhack the seconds. I'm going to pull it out to just move my hour hand so that you can see all the features of this watch, and then I'm going to screw it back in. Okay, there we go. Now you have a better look at her. Okay, let's talk about the bezel now. I love it and I hate it. Okay, it has its advantages and disadvantages. What I love about it is the way it looks. I mean, it's just beautiful with this sort of like Pepsi combination of red, and this is dark blue. What I hate about it is something that is going to be very difficult for you to see or hear, but the action is, well, it's too soft and it's too mushy, okay? And there is a significant amount of backplay in this bezel, and I don't like that. Now, normally, you know, you think of like the Grand Seiko having, you know, incredible finish quality, and that just doesn't translate down when we get down to this end of the brand. And these watches, many of the inexpensive Seiko watches are literally notorious for being unable to line up the bezel with the hash mark. And this particular watch is no exception. So now I'm lined up here. If I go one more, it's short. All right. Now I have so much slop in this bezel that I'm able to, you see I just moved it that direction, and now it's lined up. But it didn't click. It didn't click. And what that means is that I'm in the middle of the sloppy zone of this bezel. It's dirty and sloppy. It's like sloppy seconds here, because notice I've just rotated it back that way a little bit, and that's what'll happen as I go through the day wearing this watch. That sucker will just move around, and if I click it, bink, right there, it clicked. Now it's a smidge-a-rooney over. So this little fucker just will not line up. So most of the time, with my little bit of OCD, what I do is, I do the best I can. I just kind of noodle it as close as I can get it, and then, well, hell, it gives me something to bitch about and play with. So there are pros and cons to this bezel. The coined edge of it is very nice. It is really quite smooth, although this is deeply cut and nicely polished, so you get a bit of flash on the side of the watch. And that contrasts nicely with the brushed case. So I do like it, but it's pretty smooth, and therefore it's a little bit difficult to grip. And all that means is that you just have to put a little bit of a squeeze on there in order to turn it. But because the action is so easy, aka sloppy, I wouldn't call it difficult to turn. So I love this bezel and I hate it. But like I said, on balance, I really like the overall watch. So no problem there. Now, the case, I'm not going to spend a ton of time on it. Mostly what I want to do is show it to you. It has slightly curved lugs, high polished flanks here on the side. The crown is not signed. However, it is polished on the end, and it is knurled on the edges. The case is called a turtle because it has like this shell. Now, you know, this is a 44 millimeter watch, but it wears pretty small. You saw that in the wristwatch check. I'll put it on again in a minute. But it wears pretty small, and I think that is because although it is 44 millimeters from edge of the case to the edge of the case, the eye is really going to get drawn to that bezel, and that's smaller than 44 millimeters. I don't know exactly what it is, probably closer to 40. So it wears like a 40. Although it still has really good wrist presence, and technically, in reality, it's a 44. So what I'm saying is, if you have a slightly smaller wrist and you normally can't wear a 44 or a 45 millimeter watch, I think you'll be able to wear this one. Well, let's put it on. There you go. And I have a 7 1/4 inch wrist. Let me move this camera a little bit. There we go. Let's get a little better look at it. On the case back here, you have the tsunami wave, and you got a little bit of laser engraving here. I'm not going to read it to you, but you can get a quick peek at it. It's the not so special edition. I say not so special because, you know, in reality, the only thing that makes this stand out from any other turtle is that dial and that insignia. I think you can get them on eBay now. On the one hand, on the other hand, I gotta say I like it, and I think it's going to be a bit more collectible than many of the turtles, because this is something that's co-branded, and they don't do that very often. So I think that this might stand out a little bit. Now, the weak point of this whole watch, or I should say the weakest point so far, has been the bezel. But I'm going to move the camera a little bit, and then we'll talk about the bracelet, which is another weak point, sort of. Okay, the bracelet. I have to say there's aspects of this bracelet that I really like, and some things that I don't like. Now, you'll notice, see that line right there? Boy, doesn't this remind you of this is like an oyster type bracelet, but doesn't that line remind you very much of the Omega bracelets, which have a polished piece right in there? So for the Omega bracelet, it would be a 5-piece, 5-link five pieces to the link. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And what Seiko has done here is they've given the optical illusion of a 5-piece, even though it's really 3, because all that is an etched line right there that's polished. Okay, so these links here are lightly brushed. That little edge is polished, and this is brushed and polished and brushed. So it actually looks better than you would expect for a watch at this price point, but it's a little bit smoke and mirrors. They've sort of have taken a shortcut here, but I have to say that looks pretty good, and we have the high polished sides of the links. So you know what they've done is they've made it look pretty good to the eye. Now what they haven't done is taken the rattle out of it. It doesn't have a lot of droop in it on the one hand, so that's pretty good, but it's a little rattly. So that's something that I don't like about it. And also too, look at the fit here. That's not awesome. That's like a big gap, you know. I think, and it's a little smaller on this side, but it's still kind of noticeable to me. I don't think that's acceptable. I think strap code is making replacements for various Seiko watches that fit better than Seiko's own watch. How nutty is that? On the one hand. On the other hand, you know, look at it. It's not something that the eye tends to completely zero in on, and that gap tends to grow as I move the bracelet down. Hi everybody, I'm a cheap fucking piece of shit bracelet. But overall, I'm a pretty cool watch. So, you know, this doesn't even look too bad, the clasp with the signed Seiko bit, but boy, it is so thin. This metal, this is stamped out metal, and it's so thin, it almost gives me the feeling that I could bend it if I want to. I mean, it probably isn't that easy, but man, you could almost shave with this, it's so skinny. That being said, none of these pieces are sharp, they're at least finished. Sometimes you get a new bracelet and everything is sharp and you almost want to soften it up because you have to touch it constantly, and the edges can be poorly finished. This is finished nicely, but what would it have taken to just stamp this out of slightly better stuff? Look, I know at the amount of bitching that I'm doing, I should probably just replace it with a strap code, but you know, who wants to take a $400 watch and then throw another $100 into it? You know, it's like a quarter of the value of the watch to put into a replacement bracelet, because the new bracelet would cost about $100. And it's not that I'm being a cheap fuck. I just think that at this price range, I'm not feeling happy about investing another $100 into the bracelet. I think it's putting more into this than this is worth. Now, that might be because most of my watches are Rolex and kind of high end. So if this is like going to be your daily wear, your beater, your lover, your everything, if you're going to sweat and go to the public toilet and the beach and masturbate in this watch, then get a strap code bracelet for it, and you'll love her even more. But also, when you have to size this thing, oh man, it's a bitch. Holding these links together are friction pins that go in these little holes. Now, typical to most Seiko bracelets, you're going to get arrows on the, you'll get arrows right here on the links, which tell you, see if I can get it focused, which show you what direction to drive the friction pin. So these arrows are pointing that way, so the friction pin just drives that way. And here is a friction pin, but on the back side of the hole, inside there's a little tiny sleeve that's been jammed onto that friction pin. Anyway, it's a bitch. I'm not going to explain much more than that now. I made an entire video on that, so go back and, oh, by the way, subscribe, please, like this video, blah, blah, all that stuff. But, you know, then you'll be able to find my video on how to deal with these little bitches, because this is a bitch right here. These sizing this bracelet, not such an easy thing. So I have mixed feelings about this bracelet, because, you know, to the naked eye, it actually doesn't look really bad, but I kind of feel like you know what? this is like IKEA furniture. It looks good on the outside, but if you scratch it, you know, through it, you're going to find particle board and stuffing. So I kind of don't like the components of how they made it on the one hand. On the other hand, you know, what's showing to the public, that the part that you can see, I gotta say, looks pretty good. Okay, I want to talk to you briefly about the Loom, and then I'm going to light this puppy up. So earlier in this video, I told you that there was kind of a trick to the Loom. And there is a trick. Now, I got a flashlight here. If I were to light up my Rolex or many other watches that have like C3 Luminova or Super Luminova on them, and if I were to light them up for that length of time, they would torch like this, and this Seiko is just, you know, glowing quite nicely. But this is going to fade out super duper fast. So I went into the direction box booklet and I read the instructions, and what I discovered surprised me a little bit, but it really does work. The instructions tell you that this that the LumiBrite has to be strongly illuminated for 10 minutes. And when it illuminates for 10 minutes, what it's going to do is it's going to glow for anywhere between 5 and 7 hours, and it will slowly diminish. Now, what I'm finding as I tested that is they're quite right. It will glow, it will slowly diminish, but they're wrong in that 5 to 7 hours. It'll go more like 8 hours, so that's a good thing. It'll still be readable after 8 hours. But those of you who just, you know, like right before bed, if you quick hit, or right before you walk into a movie, if you just do a quick illumination on a light, and if you're used to that being good enough to last for hours and hours, well, it's not good enough for this puppy. Obviously, you're not going to flashlight it for 10 minutes. Now, this is really super easy in the daytime. Just your outdoor activities is going to take care of that for you. But if you're going to want this to be really lasting for you all night, you're going to have to leave it under a lamp or a light for a significant period of time. And then, in fact, it will last for you all night long. And if it doesn't last all night long, well, guys, don't complain. You don't last that long either. Just ask the wife. So I've just hit this for an extra couple of minutes with the flashlight, dimmed down the lights. And now you can see what I'm talking about, that little weirdness of the illuminated lollipop. That's not the seconds. The seconds are all the way down here. So you kind of have to do a mental calculation if you're trying to time things down to the second, or you can, you know, you can start with the lollipop. But listen, if you know what the hell that is, if you're a diver and I'm just an idiot and I don't know why the lollipop is down at the wrong end, please do tell me in the comments. Anyway, let me hit it again because I didn't do the whole 10 minutes. But you can see it really is super bright. However, if you want it to last for a really long time, you have got to give it long exposure to the sun. Not, you know, a quick blast is only going to light it up for so long. Okay guys, well that's the review on this watch. I mean, a quick review is that there's lots of little flaws with the Seiko Turtle, and this was the PADI edition. There's lots of little flaws. The bezel is sloppy, the clasp is crappy, the bracelet is iffy, there's a gap right where it joins the watch head. You know, and all that being said, I'm really fond of this watch. It looks really good, and right after this outro, I will put a couple of pictures of it in bright sunlight, and I think once you see that, you'll kind of understand why I'm kind of hooked. Anyway, give me your opinion on this watch. Am I crazy to like it? Am I crazy to be so critical of it? What do you think? Tell me in the comments. Please do like this video. It really does help me, and I would love to have you as a let me try it again. I would love to have you as a subscriber so we can do this again. All right, thanks guys.